The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became bright as light. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will set up 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they opened their eyes, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. It begins with a question. Who do you say that I am? Which prompts Peter's bold confession, "You are the Messiah." Well done, Peter. But when Jesus starts explaining exactly what it means for him to be the Messiah, that he will undergo great suffering and even be killed, Peter rushes to his defense. "God forbid it, Lord. This must never happen to you." Which in turn prompts Jesus' infamous words, "Get behind me, Satan." And Jesus continues in his explanation of what it means for him to be the Messiah, and even the implications for his followers. "Let them take up their cross and follow me." Turns out this following Jesus thing is not going to be easy. Peter alone was bold enough to confess Jesus' messianic identity. Did Peter really not know what it meant, though? Or maybe he knew exactly what it meant, and so he tried everything in his power to stop it from happening. "You're going to do what, Jesus? God forbid it." And then 6 short days later, they're on the Mount of Transfiguration, and Peter sees his opportunity again. "This is great. Let's build some tents and stay a while. Like, how about forever? Forever would be good." I suspect Peter knew exactly what it meant for Jesus to be the Messiah, or at least had a pretty good idea. And he knew exactly where the road to Jerusalem would ultimately lead. He just wanted to preserve the good thing he had a little while longer. Peter wanted to stay, to keep things exactly how they were, and truthfully, who can blame him? With every passing Transfiguration Sunday, and with every passing news story, more and more I get where Peter is coming from. The temptation to stay where everything is good and safe, to insulate ourselves from all that seeks to harm us and those we love, to pretend like it doesn't exist, and to build for ourselves tents of security. It's certainly a strong temptation. I get it. Peter had every reason to be afraid and every right to want to hold on. And then all of a sudden comes a bright overshadowing cloud and a disembodied voice. Is it God? "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased." Where have we heard that before? Matthew tells us the disciples were overcome by fear. Yeah, no kidding. And so afraid, in fact, that they fell to the ground, physically paralyzed by their fear. It's quite an experience to be overcome by an emotion that intensely, be it fear or grief or anxiety. It's the only thing we can think about in the moment. It's got a grip on us that won't let us go. It feels impossible to do anything else. It might even feel as though we're suffocating. In the midst of the disciples' intense fear, Jesus offers a surprising and gentle act of grace. Jesus came and touched them. Jesus doesn't berate the disciples for their fear. There is no "get behind me, Satan" in this moment, nor does he judge them. For as much brightness and illumination is present in today's gospel story, the shadow of fear is just as real and just as present in the lives of Jesus' friends. That fear was surely more than just the drama of the present moment. After all, Jesus had just been explaining to them a few days ago how being the Messiah meant that he would soon suffer and die, and that very likely his disciples would as well, just for being associated with him. What had they gotten themselves into? Jesus reaches into that fear and touches them. Perhaps an act of blessing, certainly an act of compassion. I imagine Jesus' outstretched hand reaching out to his friends huddled in their fear on the ground. He doesn't forcefully grab them by the cloak and yank them back up, but he calmly, patiently, gently takes a hold of them to help them back on their feet. Get up. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Where have we heard that before? Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid, the angel whispered. Though in fact Joseph had every reason to be afraid of what would happen to his pregnant fiancée, afraid of what would even happen to him by association. In the midst of Joseph's intense fear, he is met with a promise. Do not be afraid. This child will be Emmanuel. God is with us. This child would grow up to embody Emmanuel, to remind his people that God is with them, quite literally. On the Mount of Transfiguration, this now fully grown Emmanuel stoops down and reaches out to his friends in their intense fear with the same words of promise that have been present in this gospel story since the very beginning. Do not be afraid. I am with you. In the midst of Joseph's fear is a blessing and a promise. In the midst of Peter and the disciples' fear is a blessing and a promise. Jesus frees his disciples from their fear so that they can face the journey back down the mountain and the road that lies ahead, confronted almost immediately by a crowd and a father whose son is severely ill. What is most intriguing to me, though, is not the scene that follows, is not the miraculous healing, but Jesus' almost tongue-in-cheek frustration directed at his disciples who tried and failed to cure the boy themselves. How much longer must I be with you? Jesus sighs in exasperation, just before finally healing the boy himself. Now, I can't say for certain what Jesus meant by that question, and I could totally be making this up and reading into Jesus' words what I want to hear and preach. But reading this story and this line in the context of the whole of Matthew's gospel, these words seem like more than just a coincidence. Matthew's gospel is a story that begins with the promise of Emmanuel and the encouragement, do not be afraid. At every turn, and most dramatically and tenderly at the center of this story, Matthew's gospel reverberates with the experience of Emmanuel. Now, as Jesus sets his face toward Jerusalem, toward his own suffering and death, he asks, "How much longer must I be with you?" And Matthew's gospel story doesn't end there, but with a decisive answer to that very question on another mountain just before Jesus' ascension. "I am with you always, to the end of the age." How much longer? How about forever? In the midst of Peter and the disciples' fear is a blessing and a promise. In the midst of our fear, and goodness knows there is more than enough of it to go around, is a blessing and a promise. Even when we are huddled on the ground in our fear, Jesus stoops down to us and reaches out a patient, gentle hand in compassion and blessing to help us get back up on our feet. Jesus frees us from our fear, frees us for the journey back down the mountain, for the work of ministry in increasingly challenging times, and empowers us to boldly proclaim, in the words of that marvelous accidental Puerto Rican theologian, Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio. Maybe you tuned into his halftime performance last Sunday. The only thing more powerful than hate is love. Indeed, in the midst of fear and hate and bitter division, this is our calling, to love, and to love fiercely. And through it all, Jesus promises us, "Do not be afraid. I am with you."